Hello, welcome to this video. Thank you so much for tuning in and sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome back if you have. My intention is unity and oneness, sovereignty, the highest levels of love light, creative expression and expansion. My intention with this video is just to kind of share what I've been seeing energetically, what I've been seeing in dream time, synchronistically, through messages, and basically what I've been feeling this week. So there's a lot in the bag this week. We've had some activations with the sun. I pay attention to the aurora, and if I'm feeling a lot of electrical stimulation, so to speak, usually it's in alignment with a lot of activity in the aurora or with the sun. I tend to see the results on the Schumann resonance directly is connected to all of that as well. And my feelings in my body and energies that I'm tapping into. Sometimes the energies I tap into are really highly energized and very logical, where it's a lot of almost like a computer left brain. Other times what I tap into is more right brain, right? And a lot more feelings come up. A lot of emotions can clear. A lot of memories come up. I tap into the future, the past, whether it be in this lifetime or other lifetimes. And that is all happening for me at different moments. We all are supercomputers. And the message that's been coming through all week, well, among many other messages, but the primary one is we are being invited to recognize that we are supercomputers, superconductors, receptors, receptacles for energy. We're electromagnetic. Speaking of, got a storm going on outside. We are electrical, we are magnetic, we are blood, we are plasma, we are bones, we are crystals, we are fascia and webbing, and we have electrons, toroidal fields, and we aren't even solid. We're a vibration. We're a frequency. And what I've been shown is there are capabilities that we have not even accessed, that we have access to. Others have accessed these in the past, and we might recognize names such as Aristotle, Nostradamus, right? Nikola Tesla. All of these beings are tapping into something through their supercomputer, into knowledge, mathematics, science, and through mathematics and science, writing, right? Communication. They're using all that they have at their fingertips and beyond their fingertips to bring into the physical and create and share information. Edgar Cayce, if you've never heard of him, could see the future, or he had visions of the future. He did it by dreaming. He could fall asleep on a book and retain the information from that book. Pretty cool. How come he could do that? How is it that Nikola Tesla was able to tap into all of that? And people have their own opinions about who they were, or maybe they were part this, or maybe they were part that. But what my guides keep showing me is we are all part that. We are all part of that same relief. The relief is like a painting. You have like a piece of clay, for example, and from that clay, you mold any shape you want to, but it all comes from that clay. We are all part of that same clay. We are all part of that same liquid being, choosing what we are focusing on. Sometimes people do have that accessibility easier than others. But what I'm being shown is moving on to the computer, for example. The only reason we have a computer and that I'm able to communicate through this video with you, or telephone, or technology, is because a human being created it. A human being, from their own technology, created it, brought it into form, pulled it from the ethers, pulled it from their imagination, pulled it from science and mathematics. Where did those come from? Where did they learn it from? Who was the first teacher and where did they get that information? People didn't have a computer that told them about any of this. So there's these layers that we have the ability to tap into. We're being invited to stop giving our power away to something that we created. Fill in the blanks. What have we created? Well, we've created technology that is supposedly better, stronger, faster than we are. Yet that technology came from us, came from our box of tricks. What else is in that box that we have yet to even realize? Why would we limit ourselves by closing the box, closing the lid and saying, I have everything I need right here in this particular computer, and therefore this is what I'm going to focus on because this has the knowledge. This is going to make me better. That then cuts off that connection to source, puts it into an outside mechanical artificial influence, and then feeds energy into that. And by the way, I'm not just talking about artificial intelligence, and I'm not also coming from a judgmental perspective. If someone is missing a limb, and we have now thought as a human being and brought into existence a robotic arm to improve the lifestyle of someone missing a limb, that is beautiful. That is a beautiful gift to give someone who is missing a limb, as well as any other imbalance in the physical body that can be bettered and utilized through technology. But I'm also talking about chemicals, drugs, so much here. So, and our systems. So we as human beings created a system of finance, of politics, of entertainment, and then put it together. And then somehow, many of us got distracted by what we created. It's kind of like that song by Paul Simon, Sounds of Silence, so symbolic. And he talks about the words of the prophets are written on the subway walks. I think that's the lyrics. And also about people praying to the neon gods they've made. It's like many of us became so enamored with what was created that we have a tendency to forget that we created it. It's that worship of something that is outside of us. Even though it is part of us because it came from us, it isn't part of us. The bigger picture, it became something physical or an energy that we have then been feeding into as an artificial intelligence coming from organic beginnings, if that makes sense. So again, this is not coming from all of these things and can be utilized as beautiful tools. But we're being invited to take a step back and ask, why did we create these things? Where did we create these things from? Is this the direction we now want to go now that we've taken a step back? And if it isn't the direction that we want to go, and the machine is kind of started to take over, so to speak, then unplug it. We have that power because we are the ones feeding it through our attention, through our intention, through our energy. And you guys, this is symbolic of many different things. I don't want to get back to literal technology, our bodies, and multidimensionality. So we'll start with 3D, but also a little multidimensionality. If someone's missing a limb and they have a robotic arm, and that's not what we're talking about. I would not cut off my arm. What is it? Cut off your arm to spite your face? Is that how it goes? To then attach to it something that is man-made so that I can be a better athlete, bigger, better, faster, stronger. Or take out a part of my brain and put something in that I've artificially made to make myself smarter. We've all seen those movies, right? You guys ever watched the movie STEM? It's like a B film. It's kind of weird and gross. It's really gross, actually. Very violent. But, I mean, it's kind of like, oh, that's interesting to think about things that way. The other one is, well, there's so many. There's so many movies that we've seen with this. And movies, by the way, are a perfect example of us giving our energy to something. Us using our imaginations, and then we create it, and then we put all of our value into that something that we've created when it came from our imaginations, which came from where? Where did this all come from? So the other thing that I'm seeing reference to is that physical, that we are supercomputers, connected into supercomputer, connected into superconductivity, connected into electronics, electricity, magnetics. So why would we give our power over to something that comes from metal, that isn't something that's organic? A computer. If we don't need to. Why do we feel that we need to? Why would we feel that something outside of us is more powerful that we created? So there's all these questions that I've been guided to kind of bring up. From a chemical standpoint, oh, that movie Limitless, right? That guy takes the pill and he can do anything. He's faster, stronger, smarter, but he always has to take that pill for the rest of his life or he dies. That addiction, right? We are beautiful and strong where we are as a human being. We have feelings. We have emotions for a reason so that we can create beautiful things. This is just one version of our infiniteness, of our multidimensional aspect. We are being invited to stop giving our power away to a system, to a drug, to something outside of us that we've created to make us better. Because we already have that access. In addition to that, we live on a planet who gives all of these things freely. And yes, we could argue chemicals are created from elements that exist. So therefore, they are natural in essence as well. And while that is one version of the truth, the question then becomes, why are we creating those chemicals? And what are the responsibilities that come from creating those chemicals? What do they do to the environment that we pulled them from, including us? Why would we create something that creates a problem, creates a side effect that we have to then fix it with something else and then fix it with something else until we get so wrapped into this web that we're addicted to a chemical, addicted to a certain power, addicted to a certain technology? We're being invited to come back to our own power and our own technology and Mother Earth. We have herbs, for everything we could possibly, remedies that are natural, that are already exist. We have a tendency to think that man-made is better, but we are not man-made. We are man-made. As source existential beings, a limb of source, if you will. So while all that stuff is really neat and it's cool and it can do many beautiful good things, we're being invited to recognize when and if it doesn't. And we're being invited to take a step back and be responsible for our creations. And be responsible for the creation that we are, and to be responsible for what has been created, us. And getting back into those extrasensory abilities as well as our bodies, so multidimensionality. We are hormones. We are, we have the same ingredients such as DMT. We have the same, we produce that in our body. We produce cortisol. We produce so many things. We produce in our own bodies, in our own technology. We are a walking chemical compound. All we have to figure out is how our computer works so that we can then create what we need to create in balance and harmony. And then focus on what we came here to create, which was not necessarily things outside of us that then break down the creation that we were automatically brought into this world with, and break down the creation that we were created within and on, which is Mother Earth. We have everything we need within us. So it comes back into, why is it that Nikola Tesla could tap into that and teach us beautiful things? Or Edgar Cayce could do thousands of readings on people and see the future, make predictions, or Nostradamus. We all have the same chemical components, compounds, bone structure within us, architecture. We're being reminded to get back to that. If we feel empowered in our own right, as our own right, as sovereign beings, we then recognize that we do not have to nor should we, give our power over to someone else who might just be a little bit more aware of how to use their computer, their supercomputer. Yet they may not be 100% in full alignment with what it is that we really need. And how can we know that or recognize that if we aren't honing in ourselves and tapping into our own needs? For example, can we feel if someone is being honest with us? Can we feel when someone loves us? We all get the warm and fuzzies when we're around someone that we love or that loves us. And we all get the EBGBs when we're around someone that isn't quite in alignment with us. We don't vibe. Those feelings and senses are there for a reason. And the chemicals that we are putting into our body change that awareness. Even though they're beautiful creations and we created them, we are creating things sometimes from a baseline of 3D. When our supercomputers can be operating at a much higher potential than we might have the capacity of seeing in 3D. So for example, what is that song, I Wish I Knew Now What I Didn't Know Then? Or If I Could Turn Back Time, right? There's this idea that if I was who I am now back in high school, I would have been a completely different person, which is so true because I am a completely different person. So I now have the knowledge and base of high school, which wasn't a lot, which wasn't very good. Making a lot of Paul Simon references here today. And college and life experiences and relationships and places that I've lived and conversations that I've had and classes I've taken, et cetera, to build, that's my platform now that I operate from, right? Now I create, because of that platform, a chemical based on what I know, based on the mathematics I know, the science I know, and the truth and facts that I have access to. So then I create something based on that platform, which is only one layer, which is linear. I don't necessarily have access into the components of the future and what that particular compound may do to my body over time, because I don't learn about it until 5 years later. Hence, lead paint, using, what is it back in the day they used to use for medicine that was killing everybody? Was it morphine? No. Opium. They used to think that opium was okay for you, didn't realize that it was completely addictive. So I'm using these as examples because we don't know, and we're learning. But if we cut and put the lid on that and just say, this is the truth, and even though I don't necessarily need that, I might need it in the future, based on what I know now from this little 3D box, then I might be cutting off my access to huge potentials in the field of knowingness, so that I can support a system that I have bought into or paid value to, or that I believe is smarter than me. Our innate, our bodies know. We can feel, we can sense, we can see. We are in the process of fully activating and bringing ourselves online from being offline for so long. And some of us have already done this. Some of us have been doing it for years, and some of us are just starting to do it. I'm kind of in that in between, right? I am in a constant space of expansion. So I can feel most of the time when something doesn't feel right. We all have that ability, right? And if we are cutting off those feelings by putting chemicals into our body that essentially dull those senses, whether that be intentional or unintentional, doesn't matter. What matters is, what choices are we making? Who are we giving our power to or putting up on a pedestal, thinking that they must know better? What pedestal are they operating from? Or what platform are they operating from? Maybe they only know that much more than we do. Maybe they are really intelligent beings that really mean well, but they're missing one little piece of information that could literally be the downfall, so to speak, because they missed that little piece of information. And we are therefore investing our energy into that belief structure because we have taken our power and given it over here. So we're being invited to come back into our own power. What are our powers? Everything that I've listed before. We have a brain. We can learn what we've been taught. We can learn and retain the information about the books that we read. If I've read 30 books and you've read 100 books, you might be smarter than me in a few more areas. You might have retained the information better, but I might be smarter here. And together with that combination, working as a unit in unification, we are combining those forces and working united. But if I'm over here saying, well, I'm smarter than you, I've read more books than you, yet all of my feelings are shut down, I do not have the potential to have dreams that come true. Not the potential, but I don't have dreams that come true. For example, I don't feel many emotions. I cannot tell if someone's lying to me or not. Or I can tell if they're lying to me, but I don't know if they're good or bad, right? There's a lot of different variations of our extrasensory abilities. And I say, well, I know better because I'm smarter than you. But I'm shutting off all of those other abilities that the other person could come in and say, I want to learn, but let me show you how to feel. You guys, that's what this is all about. Our supercomputers have layer after layer after layer after layer. It doesn't just end with the brain. That is only a portion. Okay, so we have the ability to be telepathic, remote view, have dreams that come true, check into the astral, time travel, so much more. Heal with our hands. And if we have technology that helps us to do that, that doesn't take away from our experience, that doesn't require us to give it our energy, that doesn't require us to dummy ourselves down, that doesn't require us to give our power away, then that's different. Are we creating from that space? Or are we, these are the questions. Okay. So the dream that I had was with Terence McKenna, and I didn't really know much about him. And in my dream, I was hanging out with Terence and his wife, who at the time, I think her name is Kathleen. I did not know, and I've been dreaming about orangutans a lot. Love the orangutans. Oh, they're so beautiful. And there's this concept that, and I, again, did not know anything about Terence McKenna other than he was a writer and he was into psychedelics. I've never done psychedelics. I'm not a person who really does any drugs. I have participated in cannabis quite a few times, but I'm at that stage where I feel like I'm already tapping into all of that. So again, if I have something that maybe I missed, And let's say I have an upset stomach because I've been eating things I know I shouldn't eat, but I ignore my senses and I decide to go ahead and partake anyways. Digestive issues happen. I then know that ginger, that is a natural substance, and apple cider vinegar can assist me in getting back into homeostasis, getting back into a pH balance, getting back into alkalinity, getting back into balance and alignment. Or I can choose to go and take Pepto-Bismol or antacids, which then over time cover up or can lead to other issues. Been there, done that, by the way. I say this all in non-judgment because I was that person that took Dayquil and Advil or ibuprofen, no labels, cold medicine, cough syrup. Okay? I've done all of that and I get it. That's a whole other story. So Terence McKenna in my dream and the orangutans. And in my dream, the message was this. Oh, so I had to look him up. I heard about him maybe back 10 years ago. And I tried to listen to one of his videos back then, and just, it wasn't for me. It was actually his wife that came to me in the dream, and I was hanging out with them. And I was shown a lot of things. Part of it was blood. I was shown blood, I was shown food. And I was shown that essentially what we eat and what we are ingesting. For example, if it comes from animals, and I'm not going to get into this in full throttle in this particular video, but what are we ingesting? Where did it come from? Where was it sourced? What was it fed? Right? So I think about all those things. I'm not eating vegetarian, so I'm eating clean food. But when I don't eat clean food, I feel it, right? So I'm sharing this because the point was that, and so Terence McKenna, I had to look him up, and he talks about DMT as his, and mushrooms, a lot of mushrooms and DMT. And again, I haven't done anything like this. And I recognize that what he's talking about, I've already seen without doing it. I see these little DMT beauties in my meditations and my dreams. I have seen the elementals. I've seen the fascia of the earth. I've seen the ancestors and our mother trees. I've seen all of this and I've felt it. And what the dream was telling me is, because Terence McKenna talks a lot about the fact that part of the reason we'll call them I've seen orangutans as being our ancestors. Whether or not that's 100% accurate is neither here nor there. I'm just going to use them as an example because orangutans are so caring. So let's say the orangutans were part of our original ancestors, and somehow they then morphed into, from one evolutionary standpoint. The other evolutionary standpoint is that our DNA was crossed and we were mixed, and now we are a mix of those. I think from Terence McKenna, and apologies if I'm not saying this properly, but these animals were eating mushrooms. They were eating all of these things that have been around for, hundreds of thousands of years. Mushrooms were one of the first things to be alive on the planet. Think about mushroom. If you've never really looked up fungus, it literally creates a fascia network. Fascia in the earth, fascia in our bodies. Okay? So in a nutshell, it's this concept that we are what we eat. Not only that, we are our ancestors. It is in our blood. And our ancestors, let's say, if this is according to Terence McKenna, and this is just one version, I just found it interesting that they eat these mushrooms and they eat these plants, and that created this awakening for them. And that's his version of, one version of many. Whether or not that is true, the bigger picture is, if these animals were eating these plants and part of the earth, and we are the evolutionary aspects of those animals, we'll say the orangutans, then everything is inside of us that was inside of those animals. Everything is inside of us that was inside of our ancestors, because we are walking embodiment of our ancestors. So if I am an ancestor of Edgar Cayce, for example, or Aristotle, or Nikola Tesla, or fill in the blanks through these lineages, then I have that capacity that they had, and so on and so forth. This could go the other way too. You know, if you have an ancestor who maybe wasn't so nice. However, generally speaking, those particular ancestors had a certain knowledge, had a certain power that we can then tap into and utilize in our own supercomputer and utilize it for our own purposes of love and light. Perhaps your passion is cooking, and you have this ability to tap into other people's energy fields, and you're a chef and you're able to assist them in cooking these beautiful presentations of what their body needs. These are the new ways of bringing back the old ways, but creating them in our new way. So even though we are walking embodiments of our ancestors, we are still unique and individual specimens connected to the fascia and the larger network of everything. So just because my ancestor did something a certain way, or perhaps they were a scientist, that doesn't mean I'm going to be a scientist in this lifetime. But I can certainly utilize and tap into some of that knowingness and use it for what I choose as a sovereign being in this lifetime, in this expression, on this earth now, for whatever is most needed in this now moment at this time. And when I do that, I am sending that energy out into the multidimensional space that I am existing in, past, present, future. And we could talk about timelines and all of that, and I'll just touch on that briefly. So if I recognize that I am a multidimensional being, and I recognize that a version of me was an herbalist, I can set my intention to tap into that version of me, to tap into me. I don't have to go and visit me back then. I can see it in meditation. I can remember it and feel it and follow that guidance. You guys, this is a very basic representation. It isn't necessarily that easy, and I completely understand that. However, what I'm being guided to share is it is possible. And it is possible to do it now. But if we're not going within and doing the work, and we're not recognizing our emotions and why we're having those emotions or feelings, and what our extrasensory abilities are doing for us, we have to start with the little things sometimes in order to access the bigger things. And to recognize that those little things are accessing the bigger things, which means we are already in the bigger things, if that makes sense. And we need to stop giving our power away to these things outside of us that seem so big, when they're really not as big as we are. So much more where that came from. But utilizing all of the things we have at our fingertips, beyond the man-made objects, going back to who we are as our own supercomputers, paying attention to what our body needs now, paying attention to what our subconscious is telling us, paying attention to what our feelings are telling us about what we're hearing, changing the station, noticing when synchronicities are coming up for us and not ignoring them, not shutting down and closing the lid on these things because we don't understand them, right? So that's it. We're being invited to just take a step back and see all of this from the multidimensional being that we are, and recognize that we are accessing that when we take a step back. Be in the moment. Feel, listen, look, relax. And so it is. In love and light. Thank you so much for just spending this time with me and being in this now moment. This energy that's coming through when I share these and I'm in flow, this is just me and we and all of us connecting into this field of immensity. It's just a beautiful feeling. So I'm very grateful. Thank you.